everyone. You're welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Yemisi Adedeji, and welcome to Immigrant Voices and Victories. On this episode, I have a very wonderful guest. And on Immigrant Voices and Victories, we love to connect with the people. People share their stories. And Emma is someone who, has encountered so many international students. She's still, helping international students. She, was the representative for University of Nottingham. That was how I actually knew her. I'm going to leave all the introductions to her later. But yeah, welcome today. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Happy to be
here. Good. So, you know how it goes on Immigrant Voices and Victories. We like to make our guests comfortable. So we're going to go with some icebreakers. We have questions 1 to about 44, Emma. So I'd like you to choose a question and then we'll see how it goes.
Number 25.
25, okay. What's something from your childhood that you still love to do today?
I would say something that I didn't do very often in my younger years was to go swimming, but that's something that I love to do now as much as I can. So, yes.
Should we go for another one then before we kickstart our interview?
Okay. Number 39.
39. What's your ideal sandwich? That's a good one.
Oh, an ideal sandwich.
Yeah.
It probably depends on the time of day, but I have to say I do love a good breakfast sandwich, with egg and sausages in it. That's, sets you up for the rest of the day. That's something that I enjoy, especially when I'm in the UK, a good egg and sausage sandwich. Yes.
Oh, wow. I'm sure back in Africa, you know what a sandwich would look like. It would be proper bread and egg.
In Ghana, they make a very nice butter bread egg sandwich where they kind of toast it even after you put the egg in the middle. That's pretty good. I think if there are any Ghanaians watching, they'll know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I like a special dish or just bread and butter spread and all that.
No, so it's the bread is called butter bread, so it's kind of softer. And so once you fry the egg, you put it in the middle, but then they put the whole thing back in the pan and kind of toast it from the outside as well.
Okay. Maybe I'm going to try that one of these days. In Nigeria, we kind of have a softer bread as well. We have agege bread, it's usually called as the most common one, which is like a sweet bread compared to here in Britain. When you buy bread, it's usually white. You don't get, except for brioche, you don't get like a normal sweet bread.
I guess it's a little bit like that. It's a bit sweeter, but it's very nice toasted.
I hope some of the Ghanaians in UK are not missing home already.
Funny you mentioned that. I had a student once, I said, how's it going? How are you settling in? And he said, I miss bread, and so I had to give that tip. And I said, listen, the next time you go shopping, ask for brioche. That's probably the closest that you can get. Yeah.
If you find any African shop around, you would be able to buy sweet bread from the African shop. You're welcome back here on Immigrant Voices and Victories. Today we're here with Emma Tyrant, and it's so good to be hosting Emma on this YouTube channel. If you're new here, kindly subscribe to this YouTube channel. And so Emma, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, tell us what you've been up to really.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, so as you kind of hinted when you started the introduction, I worked for 8 years as the University of Nottingham's regional representative. So based out of the university's liaison office in Accra, supporting students from across Africa with their university admissions, but also supporting the university's partnerships and also kind of developing relationships with different alumni. So that was from 2014 to 2022. And then since 2022, I started my own consultancy, which is called the Graduate Guidance Group. And so we have the University of Nottingham as one of our biggest and kind of key clients. So a lot of the day-to-day of what I do hasn't changed. I'm still working, with students, but now added other universities onto, the portfolio as well. So it's not just limited to the University of Nottingham anymore in terms of the work that I'm doing.
I'm sure we all can forget the impact you made when you were at University of Nottingham. I met you, I think, 2014 thereabouts, when the next set of students were coming, because I came in 2013 and the rep then was Bridget, I think. So I went to the, Abuja for the departure lecture and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but by 2014, when you came in, I was helping international students, settle in Nottingham. And that's how I met you. And wow, on the group, Emma is just giving information, helping and all that. And I'm sure there are lots of people out there that would never forget you, Emma, for, those wonderful years of support that you gave to everyone that went to University of Nottingham. So if you're in any other university, trust me, Emma is someone you should go to, because I can definitely tell you she's one person that, would not just get you admission. She would make sure that you also succeed, settle in as much as you can in the UK. So you'll be in good hands if you needed anything as an international student, or if you're an aspiring student that would like to come to the UK, graduate group guidance is a place to go. Anyway, we're going to talk about all of that later. So how did you start this journey? What led you here? Like, how did you get here? What was your inspiration, to become a rep?
Wow, that's a good question. How far back do I go? I think if you'll permit me, maybe I'll go back quite far. So the first time I heard about the University of Nottingham, I was about 11, I would say. And my parents had been working in what was Zaire, is now DRC. And when I was 11, we were moving back to the UK. So we had been away for 10 years, and they were working with the Anglican Church. And my mum had studied at the University of Nottingham. And my dad was looking for jobs, and he got the job of chaplain at the University of Nottingham. And so she was really excited that our move back to the UK was going to be to Nottingham, which is where she had studied. She had actually done her PhD, and it's actually the city where my parents had gotten married. And so those who are familiar with the University of Nottingham kind of campus, their wedding reception was at Nightingale Hall, so for them it felt like a real homecoming. And so aged 11, we moved back to the UK, and I found myself in Nottingham going to secondary school. But the role that my dad had, as chaplain, had a lot of interactions as well with international students. And so himself, having spent, over a decade kind of working both in the DRC, Zaire, and also separately in Kenya, he was really keen to kind of connect with international students that were coming to the university. So my kind of teenage years, definitely, there was a kind of stream of different international students that would come for Sunday lunch every weekend. There were Christmas dinners that had kind of international students from Singapore, from Kenya, from India, from the US, so that kind of interaction, I would say, goes back quite a long way in terms of being able to understand what it's like to arrive somewhere new and to be able to offer a welcome. So that definitely wasn't, what made me think I want to work, in the international office. But I would say it definitely sowed some seeds that I was able to kind of, reap a lot later on.
So wonderful to hear that. I also, I think, benefited from the chaplaincy at University of Nottingham because I think is it Cornerstone? Yeah, I used to have a very good relationship. I'm sure they still do, where you have these host families. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
when I came into Nottingham, I had a host family from Cornerstone through the chaplaincy,
Yeah.
where I visited them. We had tea. It's so wonderful. I think the work that the chaplains at University of Nottingham do. What was your background like? School experience? Everything was in Nottingham then, I guess.
So I went to secondary school in Nottingham. Primary school had been in Zaire slash DRC. So we lived in a very small kind of border town between the DRC and Uganda. And yeah, it was the kind of school that was run by the Catholic Church. And so that's where I did my primary schooling. Then yeah, Nottingham for secondary school, and then when I was choosing universities, I remember going and researching other universities, but I kept coming back and kind of thinking, why do I need to go away from Nottingham? I'll be really honest. I wanted to go somewhere different from my mum. I kind of thought, okay, this is where she went. I want to have my own kind of
Yeah.
institution that I can say is mine. But the more I visited other places, the more I kept kind of thinking, actually, I think I would rather stay here. And so I joined the University of Nottingham and I did my undergraduate degree in history. But I took a number of kind of electives in French as well alongside that. So
Wow.
yeah, so I graduated my bachelor's in 2007.
Everything has been Nottingham. Like you said earlier, I guess God just wanted you back in Nottingham. That seed, just kept on growing and growing. I guess God was just ordering your steps. So let's talk about your journeys in Africa and everything.
Having grown up in, I'll just refer to it as DRC because that's what the name is now.
Uh,
I was quite familiar with East Africa because we would often transit through Uganda, we would transit through Kenya. As a family, we went back again and kind of visited, and we actually went to Kenya for a wedding that was a student who had asked that my dad, preside over her wedding. So East
um,
Africa kind of, was a bit of a constant. But when I graduated from my degree, I actually went somewhere completely new and went to Senegal. So I moved to Senegal immediately after I graduated. And that was a placement that was organized by the British Council to be an English language assistant in an English language school that was run by the Senegalese government, with support from the British Council. And so going there, was a very different experience, but also I think a really important year for me to know that, okay, I can chart my own path. I'm not just going where I was taken as a child. And yeah, it was one of the best years of my life, I have to say. Kind of having
uh,
that weight lifted. You've graduated. There's no immediate pressure. What are you doing? Learning a new language. Reinforcing my French, making different friends, gaining different experiences. And I ended up staying in Senegal for actually 4 years in total, as I kind of found other opportunities to work. Um, and yeah, so I stayed there for 4 years in total before I moved to Ghana.
the African people I know, I think by now you have an African name. So let me know, what is it?
Yeah. In the DRC where we had lived, the local group where we were the Lugbara, which is a very small, not so well known kind of ethnic group. And the name that I had been given as a nickname when I was a child was Ayikoru, which kind of means happiness.
Oh,
But then, when I came to Ghana, the Ghanaians have the day name. So, in Ghana, I'm a Monday born, so I'm an Ajua.
so now you've got a lot of middle names.
Indeed.
Oh, wow. Haven't you been given a name in Nigeria at all?
I don't think that I have.
Oh, we
No.
need to give you one.
I think my trips to Nigeria are always very busy. It's rare that I'm somewhere for more than 4 or 5 days in a row. So I think we've not had time for that to come up.
Are you the first in your family?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good. If you're the first, then I guess the Igbos would just call you Ada.
Okay.
What country did you travel to recently, and what was your, say, last project that you had?
So my most recent travels have been to Nigeria, to Togo, and then also to Cote d'Ivoire and to Senegal. So one of the kind of projects is trying to get more information to the Francophone students as well about the opportunities in the UK.
Just going to ask you to tell us more about the graduate group guidance and what you do and what you focus on.
Okay, thank you very much. So the graduate guidance group, like I said, to me, it's kind of a continuation of the role that I had when I worked exclusively for the University of Nottingham, but then adding in some additional components to it. So the first thing that we do is supporting students with identifying the right course for them, helping them with the admissions process. If the institution that they've chosen has any scholarships, making sure that they're aware of the scholarships, that they don't miss out on the deadlines, and then taking students through the visa process, kind of arriving and settling in. And so trying to just help people have that sense of community before they've even arrived. And that involves then also linking in, maybe current students or alumni that can offer some really valuable advice and orientation. The second part of what we do is also looking at how do we help alumni who have returned to their home countries connect with each other, and also with employers or more senior alumni. So one of the questions that often comes up is, it's all well and good if, I get to the UK and I want to stay in the UK, but what if I want to come back? How are you going to help me connect and get some of those senior positions, or, introduce me to people who are working on interesting projects? And so looking at how the university career services that currently exist within the UK can be kind of extended for those that have graduated. So most UK universities will offer career support to their graduates for a minimum of 5 years after they've graduated. Some universities, it's lifelong. Even 20 years after you've graduated, you can still come back and get help with your CV, etc. So just trying to look and see how do we extend that so that it's not only available to those that have stayed in the UK, but also to those that have moved back home. And it's been really interesting to see the interest in employers, who are kind of looking for that talent, people that have had international experiences. But I think more so from people who want to network with each other. So, maybe you graduated from Sussex, somebody else graduated from Nottingham, somebody else graduated from Edinburgh, somebody else, graduated from Bradford. How do you also find that common ground and share experiences and opportunities. So that's the second part of what we're doing that is kind of more focused on careers and kind of personal development as well.
I think I've never heard that you could always go back to the university for support. Wow, that's good. What are your top tips for international students who are looking to travel to the UK?
Yeah, very good question. I think the first thing is, you know, to explore all of your options, and to ask lots of questions around, you know, what to expect. So obviously, you know, in the UK, there's the Office for Students who play a really big role in terms of quality assurance, making sure that whichever university you choose, you know, there's a minimum standard in terms of the teaching hours that you have and quality. But the actual day-to-day experiences of students from one university to the next can vary a lot. So I think knowing what your expectations are is really important. I sometimes meet students who, you know, they're kind of like, oh, just tell me which, you know, institution is best for me, or, you know, I'm open to whatever option. And I kind of say, well, I feel like you need to have a list of your own criteria of what it is that you're looking for. Set out your expectations, so that when you're making a choice, you know why you've chosen one over the other. You know, is it that you want to be in a big city environment because of, you know, maybe work placements, part-time work, etc.? Is it that you want to be in a very research intensive institution because you're thinking about PhDs and postdocs? What is it that you're looking for? And I think for a lot of people, they haven't ranked what is most important to them. And so that would be the first thing is, you know what your own deal breakers are, so that when you've chosen somewhere, you don't arrive and then suddenly think, oh, but actually I was looking for something else. And, you know, there's no one size fits all in terms of choosing a course or an institution. So that would be my first thing. And the second thing that I mentioned in terms of asking lots of questions is, you know, it's absolutely your right to ask, you know, what's a typical week going to be like? You know, what's the career service like? What's the city like? When it comes down to the finances, you know, are there funding opportunities? Sometimes people feel shy to ask if there are funding opportunities, you know, kind of say, is it too is it too much to ask, you know, in terms of what funding is there, what payment plans there are? And I'd say no, but let that not be the only thing that is guiding your decision. And that comes back to that first point that I made in terms of knowing what it is that you're looking for. Because, you know, I have met students along the way where you kind of say, well, you know, what are you interested in studying? And they say, well, which one comes with a scholarship? And it's like, well, as a student, if you're choosing a course because it comes with a scholarship, to be honest with you, you're very unlikely to be selected for that scholarship because you're not going to be able to explain, you know, why you want the course. So I think knowing what your criteria is and not being afraid to ask lots of questions to help inform your decision. That's where I would start.
Yeah, wow, so good. So don't be afraid to ask lots of questions, know your criteria, know what you really want for yourself. I know it's sometimes difficult when you're back home in your home country, you know, all you want is just, I want to go to a university, I want to go abroad, you know, but you must sit down and start thinking. And if you're still confused, contact Emma. She'll give you more tips. All right. So, what do you think are the major differences between international and home students?
In terms of within the UK context,
Yes,
if you
within
could
the
just,
UK
yeah,
context. Yes, let's
okay.
do the UK, please. Yeah.
Um, so, so I think one of the big things that people don't realize, and I'll maybe split this into both undergrad and postgrads. So,
Mm,
if you're an undergraduate student arriving into the UK, what a lot of people don't realize is that most home students are also leaving their hometowns to go to university. So it's a kind of British tradition that, you know, when you go to university is the first time that you would move out of your family home and you would go and live in a new city, in a new town. And it's, you know, when you try to become a little bit more independent, etc. So in part one, I mentioned that I had been living in Nottingham and then I studied in Nottingham, which was quite unusual. You know, the expectation was that I would go somewhere else, and
mm,
I actually didn't live at home because I wanted to really kind of use that time that I was at university to make new friendships, you know, to try and stand on my own 2 feet. So if you're an international student coming in as an undergrad, don't assume that the home students know it all. You know, most of them are also in a new environment, in a new city. They're also navigating that experience of being away from home, albeit they are still in their home country. So there can be that perception that, you know, they're very comfortable and so on. But
mm.
if you reach out, you'll find out that actually there's a lot more that you do have in common than maybe you realize. And so that would probably be the comment I would have around kind of undergraduate studies. When it comes to postgrad, um, the the international job market, I think, dictates the need for postgraduate study in a way that quite often the UK job market doesn't. And so, as a result of that, I would say that any home students that are doing postgraduate study, you know, or PhD, will be people who really, really like the subject that they're doing. And in a few cases, you know, potentially because they need it for a job. Whereas I think for a lot of international students, yes, you love the subject that you're doing, but it's part of a much bigger picture. It's part of a bigger kind of career plan.
Mm.
And so that maybe is a difference. I don't know. I think you've you've probably got your own kind of experiences and your own interests, um, that, you know, and your own observations on that. But from the distance that I have, um, I don't know if that kind of answers your question or not. But
Yeah. It does answer it. I think the most basic thing would be, the difference in school fees, the opportunities that we have. They're also different, the things that home students can access. International students might not be able to access those things.
mhm,
Like recently, there was an announcement about childcare and all of that. These are things that, international students will not get. Like when I was doing my
mhm,
PhD and I had a baby, I had to suspend my studies for 60 days, which was
mhm,
what could serve as my maternity leave. Because if
yeah,
I were to say I want to take a full maternity leave, I'll be on my way back to Nigeria.
Yeah.
As at then. So, we don't have the luxury of, if you have a baby when you're studying, you don't have the luxury of a maternity leave. You would, thank God you will be able to get a maternity pay. That's if you have been working as an international student. If you haven't been working, you would get the statutory pay. So majorly, I think that's the differences from my own experience. So I just thought you would also share a different perspective from your own
Mm-hmm.
experience as well, from at least the international students that have come in to the UK through you. Which yeah, that was a very good answer. Thank you. Is there any international student story that stood out to you or that has defined all odds to graduate? It would be nice for you to share.
Um, so there are many stories. I think the ones that have been really inspiring are where maybe we've met on multiple occasions, and eventually it has happened. So there was one engineer from Ghana who I think had admission for 5 or 6 different years before he was finally able to, arrange for all the funding and everything that was needed for
Wow.
him to study. And he knew exactly, what he wanted. He needed a civil engineering master's program that was focused on kind of road construction and highways, and that was something that the course had. And so he waited that number of years before he was finally able to enroll,
Wow.
which was inspiring to see that he kind of didn't give up and kept coming back and saying, I need a new offer letter. And then also those who have not heard about different funding opportunities, for example. So I remember meeting somebody in about May of one year, and all the scholarship deadlines for that September had closed. So I said, look, you can apply and still get an offer, but if you're looking at scholarships for this September, you've missed all the deadlines. And I said, have you heard of Chevening? And she said, no. And I said, okay, take a seat. And there was just something about, how we had interacted. And I thought, okay, let me tell her about it. And she got back in touch maybe in the September, October and said, okay, I've applied, for the scholarship. Can I get the admission? And then later on, a year later, May, June, she let me know that she'd been successful and she'd had that particular scholarship. And then when we did the pre-departures, she kind of came with other family members, and she was really excited. So that you've shared the information. I don't have any influence over who gets what scholarship, but I can share the information with you that this scholarship exists. This is the process. Go away and do what you need to do. So those are probably two where you can see that there's both the interest and the drive, but also they're putting in the work. And then the other thing that I would also, I think, talk about is really leverage on the kind of career services. Don't dismiss, oh, it's not for me, or I think it's just for the home students or whatever, because it really isn't. The staff in the different careers services, are also looking out for how they can best connect people. They're constantly looking out at what are the career journeys that other alumni have had, and how can somebody, like you with maybe that same course have a similar kind of path. So they've got a lot of information that you don't have. And so definitely lean on that from the beginning of your course if possible, because I have seen people getting into roles with companies that they kind of say, I would never have found this company on my own. You know, maybe it's a small company that has a very small number of employees, but you know, somehow they were in touch with the career service who said, actually, we're looking for somebody with this profile. And in some cases, you know, people have taken up short placement opportunities, and then the firm that they've been working with for even just 2 or 3 weeks, you know, will then actually make an offer and say, actually, when you're done, come back and see us. You know, we'll have a role for you. So, you know, I've even heard of people saying the company wants to give me a full-time job now, and I've had to say, you know, you've not handed in your dissertation yet. You know, make sure you don't go past your 20 hours a week, because you don't want to put at risk anything at all. But the companies are so keen, you know, that they say, we want you now, you know, that they're having to push back and say, please, you need to wait until, you know, this particular date. Before that, I can't do any more than 20 hours a week. So really using those different tools, I would say, is important. But I think looking beyond the big companies as well is a really big tip. Is don't just look for the big names. Look for the smaller companies as well. Quite often, they are looking for staff as well, but maybe they don't have the same budget to advertise in different places, etc. So the career services are the best place to kind of get some of that insight that's a bit more specific to your course and where you're living.
That's so wonderful. So, if you're an international student in the UK and you haven't visited your career services, oh, please do go and pay them a visit and know, you know, what they have to offer. They are there for you. So, have you, by any chance, had any? I know there's two sides of a coin. Any, you know, issues with students who have had issues and have had to be withdrawn, or, you know, any kind of stories that you're not so happy about, but you know, life happens, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. I have to say, I think I've had a few students who have had maybe delays for their graduations. You know, sometimes it's been because, you know, they were promised some funds towards their tuition that in the end didn't materialize. Or they had kind of family issues that came up, you know, the death of a parent or a relative. You know, these are not things that you plan for. And and so the cases that I can think of, you know, generally the universities allowed them to complete, you know, the study part, but then they had to enter into a payment plan before they could actually, you know, be able to graduate and collect their certificates. What I think I would warn students against is expecting to be able to work part-time towards paying your fees. I know that there are some universities who have been very strict about, you know, if you can't pay your first installment, then you know what, we're going to withdraw you. Like, there's no point going any further. You know, at least, you know, if you had the funds that you declared at the time of your visa application, the first installment shouldn't be a challenge. So I know there are some universities that, you know, are very, very strict about that. And generally what I kind of tell people is you really should know, you know, where your tuition is coming from. That shouldn't be something that is dependent on being able to get a part-time job or anything like that whilst you're studying. It's not something that, you know, I would wish on any person. Go through that investment of arriving and then being short of your tuition and having to withdraw. So if you need to take your time and wait, so that you can do it properly, then take your time and wait. I think every year we have at least one or two students who will book university accommodation and then go and rent privately. That's one of my personal kind of bugbears, because, once you've entered into a contract with the university accommodation, you're in a contract. It doesn't matter that you haven't paid anything. The university considers that you are sleeping in that room and they're now not selling it to somebody else. So if you go and then rent a room off campus, don't expect, for that to be forgiven or to be forgotten, because you've entered into a contract. So I think that's one of my biggest bugbears, is forever kind of telling people, if you've signed a contract, it doesn't matter if money hasn't changed hands. Once you've signed a contract, it's a contract. So make sure that you really read, the terms and conditions really carefully before you make any commitments.
Yeah. I'm laughing so hard because I got into that as an international student when I first came to the UK. Thanks to, Professor Wande, who is my very good friend, who studied in the UK. She's now in the US. So when I told her, and she knew that I had gotten full funded scholarship for my master's, and she knew that I was going to have to, by the grace of God, just pay less for my accommodation. So we're looking for options. Usually after you get your offer, all of those accommodation details will come with it. So if you don't know, or if you don't get help from people like Emma, you wouldn't know some things. And for me then, I just clicked the accommodation. Oh, wow, this is good accommodation. It was very close to the school, Broadgate Park. And it's very close to the school. Why not? I clicked it. Whoa. I booked a room. I booked a studio for myself. And I was sent the contract. I was like, oh, why not? So when I told my friend, she's like, MC, but we're looking for a private accommodation. Why did you do that? Oh, I told her that, it came with the offer. It came as details with the offer. Yeah. She was like, oh, no, it doesn't mean you have to click it. It doesn't mean you have to. I'm like, I thought they would book it. And then if I don't take it, she was like, you just signed a contract. I was like, what? Thank God I had one day then. So I had to call the university and say, I'm sorry, I don't want this accommodation. And they were like, what do you mean by you don't want it? We booked it for you. And I don't know what it is now, but back then in 2013, when was that? Yeah. The accommodation will be reserved for you and you didn't have to pay anything. I don't know if, lessons have been learned now and, they are making sure people are paying something. But then you didn't have to pay anything. You just book, you sign, and you come, you enjoy the accommodation, and then you start paying or you make a payment plan. Anyway, thank God for my wonderful friend back then. So before I came to the UK, I had done it for just a week, but the contract was signed. And the lady was telling me, you had signed the contract, you had to take the accommodation. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not in the UK yet. I cannot. But I did fall into that, and luckily I was able to. I apologized, and she was like, "Okay, you need to learn to read terms." That was my own hard lesson to learn before I came into the UK. Wow, as we are kind of winding down this interview, it's been a wonderful one. Lots of information from Emma, lots of nuggets. Do you think we're going to see a reduced number of international students with, the new visa rules and all of that? I know you're not an immigration expert. We need to put the disclaimer out there, but I'm just asking this question because of your experience and relationship with international students.
Yeah. I think that there will be a certain reduction. I think it's really difficult to measure, how much of the reduction is due to that alone.
That's true.
So for a lot of universities, I know that they're trying to kind of do their assessments and so on, looking back, maybe 7 to 10 years and kind of looking at, okay, what are the numbers? What we do know is that, post COVID, a lot of numbers went up. How much of that was people who were delaying their decisions? We also know that, the Australian visa process, the borders were closed for much longer than in the UK. How much of the increased numbers to the UK were because of those borders being closed? We know that numbers have gone up because of the graduate visa. And then the fact that you could come with your dependents was obviously, a real kind of bonus on top of that. So if numbers drop, definitely some of that will be because you can't come with your dependents. And this is something I've spoken to, with a few people, is that I personally find it discriminates against women in particular, because if you've got a young family, and you can't travel with your children, with your spouse, very often you end up having to make, those really difficult decisions of, do I leave my 1, my 2, my 3-year-old at home, for a year? And it's a fact that, whether you're in the UK or outside of the UK, we know that women have a bigger kind of caregiving role to play. We can argue over that, but that's the fact. And so by taking that away, you're just affecting that experience and that access for women, which I don't think is right, and I don't think it's something that the UK should be proud of. But in terms of, the offering that UK universities have, the standard of education, that hasn't dropped. As we speak, the opportunity to work after your studies hasn't gone away. If you're looking at PhD study, you can still come with your families. So I think that, yes, the numbers will drop, but it's hard to know how much of that is because you can no longer come with your dependents. How much of it is because you can no longer switch to another visa category before you've ended your studies, which I know was a problem for quite a lot of universities. People were coming in and they wouldn't finish even the first kind of month of studies and would switch onto a different visa category. So it's hard to know, which part exactly is impacting which decline. And then obviously there are external economic factors as well that we have to consider. I mean, the devaluation of the naira in particular, I think, is putting a big brake on people's plans, which is its own really big challenge. So we'll see. It's hard to know. What I know is that the interest and the desire to study, isn't going away. But then just having been working in the sector for a decade, I know that, things change, things come in, things come out, things come back again. So it's just kind of watching and waiting and seeing what's going to happen next.
So far, so good. What are you most proud of in your journey?
So that's a really good question. I think one of the biggest things, I guess, is really working out what it is that keeps you going, what drives you. And I remember for a really long time kind of thinking, am I doing enough? Should I be doing something different? And having a conversation with a friend where suddenly it kind of clicked, and it was like, actually, if I'm able to connect people with each other, if I'm able to connect people with opportunities, when they come back and say, that, grant that you told me about, or, that person that you introduced me to, it led to something that, is something that's really rewarding. And I think when you find, that thing that kind of gives you that joy, it's a really big deal. So I'm glad that I've managed to kind of figure that out, and that way I can kind of try and focus on it.
Lastly, what would be your advice for international students and immigrants in the UK?
I think I would say be very intentional about your community. So think about the spaces that you move in. Find spaces where you're being intentional about making new connections. Whether that's through joining societies, whether it's sports clubs, whether it's volunteering, but then also be intentional about having a community where you can also find a piece of home. I think it's a reality that there's always a time when you'll feel homesick, or you miss something, and having that intentionality of, okay, I'm away from home, but how do I still have a piece of home where I am? That could be other people from the same country as you. It could be people that share the same faith as you. It could, whatever it is, but just something that is familiar to you. Don't wait to feel homesick to look for those people. I think try and find your different communities, and you'll definitely not regret it.
Wow, find your community and you would definitely not regret it. I think there's something about space. Recently we interviewed Joan Embola on this channel, and she was saying that God will equip you for the space that He has put you in. And here you are as well, talking about space. And there's just something about space, creating that space for yourself. And it's something actually that, we're doing this interview on Sunday, and this morning in church as well, our pastor still, said that as, our Reach for 2024 program. And it's about creating spaces and places for people to meet with Jesus Christ. And so there's just something about space, being able to create a space for yourself, like you said, being able to create a community for yourself. So if you're out there, Emma says to you, don't wait until you miss home. Find your space, find your community, and just enjoy life in the UK. It's not that hard. Just find your space. Once you find your space, it's like Emma said, find your home away from home. G3 is there with Emma, she is also connecting alumni. So if you've graduated recently, she's connecting alumni from different countries. And I can't actually wait to be part of that, to connect with other people as well from other universities. Maybe you could actually organize something online for some of us that have remained in the UK. I think that's actually something we should start thinking about. Thank you so much, Emma.
I love the idea, definitely.
Yeah. I guess I've added one more thing to the G3 gang.
Yes, you have, definitely.
Oh, it's been a wonderful, wonderful interview. We've been talking with Emma, and yeah, it's so good to know more about Emma and her names. And we've added Nigerian names. So if you have any name for Emma, if she's been to your country, please give her a name in the comment section. We're going to be loading you up with different names. What's next for you, Emma? What's your next program? Where are you going to next?
I think we're just coming up to 2 years of activities as G3. So I think just to, look at what we can keep doing, what we can keep replicating, and and I think the G3 stands, for Graduate Guidance Group. And one of the things I always wanted from the beginning was to have as many people involved as possible. So one of the next things that is going to come up is kind of launching kind of a formal alumni ambassador type kind of role where we can match incoming students with people who, have maybe an experience that they're interested in, and looking at how we can kind of how we can get that up and running. So that's an idea that has been there for a long time.
Wow.
So kind of in the next 6 months, I really want to see that up and running, so that when you come to the website, you can see, profiles of different alumni. You can look at how to connect with them, ask your questions, and so on. So watch this space, and hopefully that will be happening.
Connect with Emma on LinkedIn. She's on LinkedIn. The Graduate Guidance Group is also on LinkedIn. They help international students. If you're already an international student in the UK as well, Emma is already, like she said, she's building up an alumni, diary. So watch this space. There's going to be lots and lots more from Emma. And I'm going to drop the website link, her LinkedIn link, and the Graduate Guidance Group link, G3. I'm going to drop the link in the description section. It's been a wonderful time with Emma today on Immigrant Voices and Victories, and we're so excited about what you're doing. And thank you so much for helping, so many international students. And I know there are lots more to come your way. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for the discussion. It was great. Good to catch you.
Fine. Yeah, so if you're here, you've not subscribed to this YouTube channel, oh my God, you've not joined the right space. You need to you need to connect here, like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We're bringing a lot and lots of different people. We have a diverse set of guests. People are sharing their own personal journey. And on different special editions like this one, we bring people who are experts in their fields to enlighten us on the right thing to do. So like, share, subscribe to this YouTube channel. And thank you so much, Emma. And I'll see you next time on Immigrant Voices and Victories. God bless you. No limits. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.